Thyra Stormvoice had been born during the fiercest tempest in living memory, and the gods had blessed her with the power to call lightning with her voice. A whisper could summon mist, a shout could bring rain, and her battle cry could split the sky with thunder. But when Jarl Ragnar's men cut out her tongue to silence her witchcraft, they made a fatal mistake. Some storms don't need words. They need only rage. Thyra Stormvoice entered the world as lightning split the sky above her mother's birthing chamber. The midwives claimed they had never witnessed such a tempest. Thunder shook the very foundations of their mountain village, while rain fell in sheets so thick that day became night. When the infant's first cry rang out, it harmonized perfectly with the storm's fury, as if she were singing along with the very gods of weather. As she grew, it became clear that the storm had left its mark upon her. Her voice carried unusual power. A whisper could summon gentle mist from clear skies, while her laughter could bring refreshing spring rains to drought-stricken fields. When she sang, the winds themselves seemed to dance around her, and when she was truly happy, sunlight would break through the darkest clouds. But her gift became truly manifest during times of strong emotion. Anger would summon thunder that rolled across the mountains like the drums of gods. Fear would call lightning that split trees and scorched stones. And when she wept, the skies would weep with her, pouring forth torrents that could flood rivers and valleys. The village of Stormhaven had learned to live with Thyra's gift, treating her as both blessing and responsibility. During drought, they would ask her to call rain for their crops. When enemy armies threatened, her battle cry could summon lightning storms that sent invaders fleeing. But they also understood that her emotions must be carefully tended, for an upset stormcaller could bring devastation as easily as salvation. Jarl Ragnar Ironskull had built his power through conquest and intimidation, but Thyra's gift represented something he couldn't understand or control. Weather obeyed no Jarl's commands, answered to no earthly authority, and could destroy armies more thoroughly than any human weapon. His fear deepened when rival Jarls began seeking alliances with Stormhaven, hoping to gain access to Thyra's power for their own conflicts. The young woman's ability to control weather made her village strategically valuable in ways that traditional military strength couldn't match. "She's too dangerous," Ragnar declared to his war council after hearing reports of Thyra calling down lightning to destroy an enemy fleet. "No one person should command such power. It makes a mockery of proper authority when nature itself serves a peasant girl." His advisors murmured agreement, though privately many wondered if their Jarl's objection was to Thyra's power itself, or to his inability to claim it for his own purposes. Ragnar had always demanded absolute control over his territory, and the Stormcaller represented a force that existed beyond his influence. "What do you propose, my lord?" asked his chief warrior, Ulf the Cruel. "She's protected by storms themselves. How do we fight weather?" Ragnar's smile was cold and calculating. "We don't fight the weather. We silence the one who calls it." The attack came during Midsummer Night, when Thyra was participating in traditional weather-calling ceremonies that brought gentle rains to bless the growing season. She stood alone on the ceremonial platform, her voice raised in ancient songs that harmonized with wind and thunder, completely focused on the delicate work of guiding natural forces. Ragnar's warriors struck with brutal efficiency, overwhelming the village's defenses before anyone could warn the Stormcaller. By the time Thyra realized what was happening, armed men surrounded her platform, and steel pressed against her throat. "Thyra Stormvoice," Ragnar announced, his voice carrying across the stunned village. "You're accused of witchcraft, of wielding unnatural power that threatens the proper order of our lands. The penalty is death, but I am merciful." His next words chilled every heart that heard them. "Instead of killing you, we will simply ensure that you can never again speak the words that call storms. Your voice will be silenced forever, but your life will be spared. The mutilation that followed was swift and terrible. Ragnar's men held Thyra down while their leader used a heated blade to cut out her tongue, cauterizing the wound to prevent death from bleeding. Her screams of agony brought no lightning, no thunder, no rain, only blood and pain and the terrible silence that followed. For 3 months after the mutilation, the skies above the region remained unnaturally calm. No storms came, no rain fell, no wind stirred the trees. The unnatural stillness seemed to prove Ragnar's theory that destroying Thyra's voice had ended her power over weather. But Thyra herself had not been destroyed, merely changed. Unable to speak, she was forced to explore aspects of her gift that voice had never required. She discovered that her connection to storms ran deeper than words. It existed in her very soul, in the rhythm of her heartbeat, in the fury that burned in her chest where voice once lived. The rage that consumed her was unlike any emotion she had ever experienced. It wasn't the hot anger that brought quick thunder, but cold fury that built slowly like pressure in the depths of storm clouds. Without voice to release this emotion, it accumulated within her like lightning seeking ground. During those silent months, Thyra learned to communicate with storms through pure intent, raw emotion, and the electromagnetic field that her body generated when she was truly enraged. The weather responded not to words, but to the elemental anger that burned in her mutilated throat. The revenge began on the anniversary of her mutilation. During what should have been another calm, windless night, Ragnar was celebrating in his great hall, toasting his success in taming the weather witch, while his warriors drank and boasted about their conquest of nature itself. The first lightning bolt struck without warning, splitting the night sky with such brightness that it turned darkness into blazing noon for one terrible instant. But this wasn't natural lightning. It carried malevolent intelligence, seeking specific targets with deadly precision. The bolt struck Ulf the Cruel as he raised his drinking horn, the electricity cooking him from inside while leaving his companions untouched despite standing mere feet away. The smell of burned flesh filled the hall as Ragnar's chief warrior collapsed, his body smoking and his face frozen in an expression of absolute shock. But more terrifying than the death itself was the realization that the lightning had come from clear skies. No clouds, no wind, no natural conditions that could explain the strike. This was weather answering to will alone, controlled by fury that needed no voice. What followed was a campaign of supernatural terror that defied every natural law Ragnar thought he understood. Lightning struck his warriors during cloudless days, targeting them individually with accuracy that no random weather could achieve. Thunder rolled through clear skies, speaking in frequencies that resonated in human bones and caused grown men to weep from inexplicable fear. The psychological effect was devastating. Warriors who feared no human enemy found themselves terrified of the sky itself. They couldn't predict when lightning would strike, couldn't defend against thunder that seemed to come from within their own bodies, couldn't fight an enemy who attacked through the very air they breathed. Ragnar's attempts to find and kill Thyra failed because she had learned to become one with the storms themselves. She would appear like mist on mountain peaks. Her presence felt as changes in air pressure that made breathing difficult. She moved with winds, struck with lightning, and vanished like fog when pursued. As his forces crumbled under supernatural assault, Ragnar realized that silencing Thyra's voice had not weakened her power. It had transformed it into something far more dangerous. The storm caller who had once guided weather with careful songs now commanded it through pure rage, and rage knew no mercy. His great hall became a fortress where men cowered from the sky, afraid to venture outside even during apparent calm. But storms penetrated every defense. Lightning found every weakness, and thunder spoke directly to their deepest fears without requiring ears to hear. The breaking point came when Ragnar's own son was struck while hiding in the deepest cellar of their stronghold. The lightning passed through solid stone as if it were mist, seeking the boy with intelligence that proved this was justice rather than random destruction. Standing over his child's corpse, Ragnar finally understood what he had unleashed by trying to silence nature itself. The final confrontation came when Thyra materialized in Ragnar's great hall during a feast, appearing like condensing mist in the center of his stronghold. She stood where Ulf had died, her mutilated mouth opened in a scream that produced no sound, but summoned thunder that shook the very mountains. Lightning danced around her fingers as she gestured toward each man who had participated in her mutilation. The electricity sought them with perfect accuracy, ignoring innocent servants while striking down every warrior who had held her during the brutal surgery. But the most terrifying moment came when she turned to face Ragnar himself. Instead of lightning, she summoned something worse: absolute silence. The unnatural quiet pressed against eardrums like physical weight, reminding everyone present of what had been stolen from her voice. When the silence finally broke, it was with thunder that spoke in a language older than human words, carrying a message that penetrated directly into Ragnar's soul. You tried to silence the storm's daughter. Now the storm silences you. Ragnar's death came not from lightning, but from suffocation, as the air itself turned against him. Thyra commanded the wind to abandon his lungs, leaving him gasping like a fish on dry land while his warriors watched helplessly. But even more devastating than his death was the transformation of his territory. The unnatural calm that had followed Thyra's mutilation gave way to perpetual storms that made the land uninhabitable. Lightning struck any structure built by those who had supported the attack, while rain washed away roads and foundations. The weather itself had become an extension of Thyra's permanent rage, turning Ragnar's domain into a wasteland where only she could safely walk. Those who remained learned to live as refugees in their own homes, dependent on her mercy for every moment of calm weather. In the aftermath of her revenge, Thyra became a figure of legend and warning. Unable to speak, she communicated through weather patterns that told stories more clearly than words ever could. Gentle rain blessed those who showed kindness to the voiceless. Lightning struck down those who used their power to silence others. The Stormcaller's gift had been transformed by cruelty into something that transcended human limitations. Without voice to constrain her power, she had become living weather, eternal fury, and permanent reminder that some forces grow stronger when people try to suppress them. Her story spread throughout the northern lands as a warning. Those who try to silence the voices of the gifted should remember that power often finds new ways to express itself, and rage that cannot be spoken becomes rage that cannot be stopped. Some voices, when cut out, return as thunder that never stops rolling across the sky. If this tale of ultimate payback moved you, hit that like button and let us know in the comments which part shocked you the most. Subscribe to Time for Payback for more legendary stories where betrayal meets justice, and don't forget to ring that notification bell, because every betrayal has its reckoning, and every story holds the power to change everything. What revenge story should we tell next? Drop your suggestions below. Until next time, remember, karma never forgets.